Welcome to the Sex Ed for You, a podcast where research meets reality.
This is the podcast for people who want to have great sex that is safe, fun, and enjoyable.
We desire to empower our listeners to make informed decisions that lead to values-based living. I am Lauren. I am a certified holistic sexuality educator and an embodied intimacy and relationship coach, and the very proud owner of Sex Ed for You.
I'm Holland, and I am our Chief Culture and Content Coordinator. Today, I have brought us the content, which is to speak all about menstruation. Now, before you click away, 10% of you that have penises and not uteruses, I just want you to know that we are going to talk about tips for partners of people who menstruate, because holy shit, is that important. And also, these are things that you should really know too.
Yes.
This is such an important topic that is so shoved into the darkness because bleeding, gross, scary, but it's not. It's really, really beautiful. And we are going to dive into so much of the fun history of it, why it happens, when it happens, how it happens. We're going to talk about questions. We're going to talk about diagnoses. We're going to talk all of these things that are very important, not only for people with uteruses to know, but for you to know as well. Especially if you date people with uteruses. Or even friends with women, like anyone, if you have women in your life, these are so, so important to know. So I would love to kick it off with the history of menstruation and kind of like, you've told this beautiful story about some native tribes in America, and I would love for our audience to hear that from you.
Yeah, so I teach a mindful menstruation course. I've done it as a masterclass. I now work it into courses, into work with students and clients, because there was a point in my personal journey where I was like, I've been lied to about a lot of things. I wonder if I've also been lied to about menstruation. This idea that it's a curse, that it's something I'm going to need to suffer through for the rest of my life. This idea that it's taboo, that I should be cast out of society, that I am unclean, that I am dirty. I wonder if I start digging, if I'll find anything. Sure enough. I ran into so many incredible Indigenous people groups who, for the longest time, have practiced a lot of different things around menstruation. So some of the things I teach about is there is a tribe when a person who bleeds in this tribe, most of these people identify as women. These girls go away for a year after their first menstruation to stay in a space that is basically just them and a trusted grandmother type of figure who educates them for a year. They have a year to acclimate to their new bodies, to their growing breasts, their changing bodies. They have a year to learn new rituals, to learn what it is to do this and that, what sex is. There's a ton of sex education because, as we all know, when you start menstruating, actually right before your first period, you have your first ovulation. And so you are now able to become pregnant. So there's a lot of education around sex and pleasure and pregnancy and childbirth and child rearing and what it means to be partnered, what domestic violence looks like, a ton of very, very special education. And it was interesting because I stumbled into, I want to say it's like a New York Times article, and there are definite downsides to this, right? The young girl feels very sad when she leaves her community. But overall, most of these women that you talk to who had this experience after first menstruation will say they can't imagine not having had it, right? It's unfathomable to them that they would have had to just go right back into society, now being a bleeding teenager, having no idea how to care for themselves, how to care for their bodies when they're menstruating, how to love on themselves. So yes, it's hard in the moment, but aren't so many rituals and the rites of passages. And I'm not saying, please remember, y'all, it's not like this is the way to do it. I'm just saying interesting that these young girls stop school for a year, stop all of these things to go and learn their bodies. Just interesting.
It's so interesting to me, especially since in this like American society, when I got my first period, and all of my friends that I know of or haven't said anything different to the contrary to me, when we first had our period, it was, oh, okay, here's a tampon, go, like, move on. It was like every other day.
I was 11.
Right.
Like I was a child.
I think I was 12. And
children.
The first bleeding is actually known as, I can never say it right, menarche. I'll put it on the screen. And it in itself is just this complete and total change of the body. Because
so important.
Think about how big of a difference that is. I mean, let's go into it biologically. It's the beginning of fertilization for women. It is literally the first step of like your whole body is now capable of creating another body.
Yes.
Hormones are immediately changing. Like you said, breasts are beginning to bulge. Other things are being like the whole body is beginning to go through puberty. It's the beginning of a woman's puberty, and it's beautiful.
Yes.
But the way we so often just allow it to happen and just act as if it is just another day is very, very interesting to me.
It's wild. So there's a few other tribes, there's indigenous people groups. There's one that does a whole flower ritual, a whole like 5-day ritual. The whole community's involved and they all make these flower crowns. It's beautiful. There's other people groups who literally have this whole thought around, yes, you do leave the community for these days because they believe that a period is the sloughing off of the collective stress of being female. It's my favorite one. And they believe that a woman should never be required to still be in her community. They believe that she should get to rest. She should be brought food. There's a whole another people group that believes that a woman is too powerful during her bleed. And so you would never want her to touch the food because there'd be too much power. So she's to rest and she's to be pampered and taken care of for the days while she is menstruating. And I just love these ideas because we'll get into this, but this idea of egalitarian society in my mind is not more women putting on male suits and stomping around corporate business things.
Right.
It is more workplaces understanding what a person with a uterus's body does and understanding that if this human takes care of their bleeding body for 5 to 7 days, they're going to come back better than ever.
Superpowers.
And we'll talk about what I think we can do during that time. But I don't buy it. I don't buy it that the way forward is us pretending that we don't bleed.
Right. Pretending that we have a 24-hour cycle, hormonal cycle. Because men do. Men have a 24-hour hormonal cycle. You are going to feel the same pretty much every day, which is your superpower.
We're so thankful.
The thing is, our superpower is not that. And a truly egalitarian society does not ask one to meet the other. It asks and it meets people where they are, and it meets us in our power. So for women, that would be to have a 28-ish average day cycle where 1 week, you do your hardest work, you do your negotiations, you are just super confident and you do whatever you want, and you are drawing people to you. And then the next week you are taking time for yourself because you might bite somebody's head off. Okay. Like it's just different. And it's a very interesting way to look at society and the way you see yourself, honestly. Even just allowing myself to shift into this posture of, oh, well, I'm on this part of my cycle. Let me just be more graceful towards this, or let me lean into the heavier, harder, more tedious work this week because I know that I am capable, because I have more energy. It has never been, let me make all of these excuses. It's, oh, well, let me just take that into account and then step forward with a different mindset. And I think that can be really beautiful. And I also want to touch back on, you said the sloughing off. That has been huge for me ever since you taught me about that. Because I took the mindful menstruation class when I was an intern, and it changed my life because I have finally seen the correlation between a very, very difficult month. Election month was hard for me. The holidays are hard. Sometimes if it's literally just a month of go, a lot of travel. My period, my cramps, my acne, my appetite, all of these things are so deeply affected in the week of bleeding. And it is incredible to see the correlation between those two things because it gives me a label for it. It gives me a reason. And I am such a like point A to point B kind of person. And so being able to see that has given me, it makes me feel like it's warranted. Yes. Like I'm sitting there in this pain. And instead of being angry at my body for like, why the fuck are you in pain? It's, yeah, like it's understandable.
To me, it's the difference between our body being an enemy and our body being an ally. And that's where it all started for me, was I had come to see my body as so wise.
Right.
And I was like, well, hold up. If my body's wise, what's this about? What's this about? And only now, right, as all this research coming out about more women having autoimmune diseases than men, and this idea that we overfunction and hold all of the collective stress of so many people in our lives. And I'm like, oh, want to know why women have debilitating periods?
Right.
And please hear me. I say this on every podcast. This is not a how-to or the only way or yada, 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 because I do believe that there are medical times for intervention.
Right. Oh,
and
absolutely.
we will speak to some of those.
PCOS,
there's PCOS, there's endometriosis that's through the roof, and we have thankful medical advancements that can help ease pain from these things. So please hear me. We are not to be sufferers and victims in our narrative. And interesting. What else can we look at life, right? And yeah, Holland and I do this all the time, right? Sometimes our periods will kick us into tail.
Yeah.
And we'll be like, that makes sense. And I need a day to just snuggle up and bleed and bleed in the bath, or lay in my bed with period underwear on and cry and moan.
Right.
And what if that's just okay?
Yes.
What if the releasing of that, which is a thing I teach, especially on day one and the days leading up, what if we don't have to hold it all anymore? And I loved that you called in, people who don't menstruate to the beginning of this podcast, because I've had male-bodied clients who've listened to the previous episode say that it has been so helpful as a way to come alongside their bleeding partners to say, hey, yeah, and what if you just took that time for yourself? Right. What if it's just okay? What if you will come back stronger tomorrow or the next day because you honored your body now? And shout out to all those partners who listen and take this information in. Because in my mind, this is the type of stuff that should have been taught in health and in sex ed in high school and in middle school.
Yes.
Because this would have changed everything. A client I was teasing the other day was, in essence, writing sex ed programs for high school as she's learning. She's like, this is what should be taught. And this is how she worked with middle schoolers and high schoolers for the longest time. And I was like, preach it. Like, this is amazing. Write it. Because she was like, we shouldn't be separated. We should all sit together for these things. Because I think, and she was saying, like, we don't give, especially young people in male bodies, enough credit too, because I bet if they knew all of this, that they would feel compassion.
Yes.
Because she was saying, I know sweet middle school boys. And I was like, right? I do too.
And we remove the opportunity for them to be compassionate feeling people. And we wonder why they grow up and occasionally become non-empathetic humans. Well, we separated them. We have consistently and constantly separated men from the conversation about empathy. And that's not fair to them.
Sorry. Holland and I had a conversation earlier, and that just, it resounds with that. I do not believe that egalitarian living is swinging to the other side of the pendulum, is becoming a hater of other. I believe it's education. I believe it is empathy. I believe it is bringing in, calling us all into these conversations so we can be in these spaces together. Because menstruation is incredible. It is mind-blowingly incredible that the uterus literally is like, oh, I'm going to make a little house for a possible egg. This is so cool. And a fertilized egg is maybe going to stay in this lining. And then it's like, oh, no. Okay, not needed. Let me shed away.
Right.
It's amazing.
And it starts anew. What a beautiful picture of just the cycle of life, right? Within our own body every single month. Within 50% of the earth, every single month, we are representing the cycle of life. And it is stunning.
It is like gasp worthy. So to infer that people in male bodies or people with penises will not be interested in caring for, walking alongside people who do bleed is a disservice, I think, to all. I do think it takes education. I think it takes an open heart. But I think we have to include everyone in the conversation.
We're also, think of it this way, we're on the front end of it now. It's the education and the awkwardness is now because we haven't before. But just as we continue to teach and teach and teach, this can become ingrained in our society, not in a weird way.
In a normalized way.
In a very normalized, yes, men can be kind and compassionate, and they can walk alongside us in this journey, and it will happen as if it's just ingrained in our nature. We are just on the front end of teaching.
You know what just hit me too is that then when someone doesn't, it'll be like an affront.
Yeah.
Like a what?
What do you mean?
Yeah. I think it's so funny. You and I have both said this about Trey, that it is so like oddly healing to watch him function, because it catches Holland and I off guard sometimes, but also it has been so healing to us. So now when I encounter someone who does not respond to something like menstruation in the way that he does, it is like, huh? And that should be the response. Yeah. I think when we normalize conversations around things such as menstruation, Holland's exactly right. It brings us all together more. And it's not weird at all, y'all. It's just not. My 14-year-old has just as open conversations with Trey about menstruation. It is not weird, because it's just a function of the body. Just like passing gas and farting. Like, this is not, we do these things.
Yes.
Our body, like vomiting, like bumping our knee. I don't know, like brushing our hair and practicing good hygiene.
And no, it won't always be pretty.
No.
But at what point has the human body ever been the most clean and perfect thing that you've ever seen? Have you watched childbirth?
No,
it's terrifying and beautiful. These things are not meant to be neat and folded in a perfect little package. But the more you can look it in the eye, the more you are able to understand the beauty within the mess. Yeah. And it is such a power to be able to understand and sit with this type of lovely mess. It really is.
I was just thinking, obviously I've also studied purity culture so much, and whenever I hear this desire for cleanliness, I always just think, ooh, I bet it has the same roots. Right? And we just butcher things. And again, some of these original texts that you will read, usually religious texts, they really meant to protect women. These original things of letting women rest outside the city were really about letting women rest. And we've spun them. Embedded theology, misinterpretations, bad translations brought down this. I know, like, patriarchy is one of your next things. So does it work to kind of switch into this? Yeah. Because when we look at translations, harmful translations of Christian scriptures and other types of scriptures, we usually can tie it back to someone in a white male body. And so that just begs the question of who benefited from this narrative, who benefits, and who is continually silenced, who is continually outcast, who is continually harmed.
Right. And when you say too, we bring up the point of typically the person imposing these rules is in a white male body. We don't mean that to say men in white bodies are bad people.
No.
We mean to say that this specific system was crafted for that person. Yeah. So this system does not fit Lauren and I because we are white women. This system does not fit Black men or Indigenous women. It does not fit non-binary people. We're not demonizing white men.
Not at all.
We are both literally currently in love with white men. Yes. Okay? Like, it is not, there's nothing wrong with that. We're saying that there is just, this system is not crafted for us, and this system does not benefit people like us. It benefits people like them. And because of that, it also harms white men.
Yes.
Because it puts y'all in this box that says this is what your life will look like, except when things break out of that box, it begins to initiate questions and initiate, like, there's like a broken system. And so then we're putting just, what is it called? Spackle on foundational cracks. And spackle doesn't fix foundational cracks because the system is flawed. And what really needs to happen is we need a new system. We don't need to fix the patriarchal system. We need a new system. And kind of what we're getting into in relation to our topic today is that medicine was not made for women. It was not made for Black people. It was not made for anyone but the white man, genuinely. Research was not done on women until, was it the 70s or the 90s?
I mean, depending on what you're looking at. But yes, if it was done on women before recent history, it was done on women of color without their consent.
Yes.
So
look up Henrietta Lang.
Yes. Look up J. Marion Sims, who is literally labeled the father of gynecology. And he was practicing on enslaved women.
Yes. Henrietta Lang is a Black woman who had cervical cancer. She is the reason we have penicillin. Her story is astounding.
So we cannot look at how we treat, how we care for. It's hard for me to use that word that we call it health care.
Right.
Because it is so often not caring. Folks just Google terms for women or people with uteruses. We literally have the term hysterical uterus.
Yeah.
We have such horrific terminology that people with uteruses are supposed to just accept and move through. I mean, it is nasty. And so we must say, oh, that's the lens that folks coming out of medical school are still receiving. Some programs have done some work to decolonize and to really bring in BIPOC teachers and midwives and start to truly look at, whoa, we have only been looking through one lens. But most are not. And most practicing gynecologists and OBGYNs and midwives went through a really patriarchal medical program. And that is not to say that there's not those out there who have gone on to do their own work. That's beautiful. But even when we're looking at these diagnoses, such as PMDD and PMADs and all of these things, and we are looking at it through a lens that labeled women hysterical.
Yes.
For a really long time, and broken and pathologized, and not a male, not a person with a penis.
Yep. To take it even a step further, I mean, so this is specifically, we're talking like women's health, gynecological care. But even in our daily lives, in daily types of care, medicines are based off of a 5'9", around 160 or 70 pound man. Seatbelts are built for a 5'10" man. What else is there? There are, so many medications. I saw actually a woman who was on a research study the other day. She said, we were wanting to use both male and female cells to test this medicine that we are creating. But then the head researcher in charge looked me dead in the eye and said, we can't use the female cells because they are changing too much throughout the hormonal cycle. So we're just going to use the male cells. This is a medicine for men and women. Let's not consider the idea that the fact that the woman might be affected, the woman on this medicine might be affected by her hormones while she takes this medicine. These things are, and it's not intentionally harmful. It is a lack of education and a lack of understanding that the woman's body is completely and totally different than a man's body. These things have not been taken into consideration for hundreds of years. And so now the medicine that we have, this Western medicine that we have founded upon racism and misogyny, is continually perpetuating misogyny and racism accidentally. Black women are 3 or 4 times more likely to die in childbirth in America than a white woman. There are all of these statistics showing, and again, I'm not saying this is intentional harm, but this is what it is. And what we need is more education within these medicinal scenarios so that we can truly help people the way they actually need to be cared for. Like you said, we need health care, not just diagnoses and labels.
We, in sexuality education, will talk about that we each have a right to and a responsibility for our own sexual values. I'd argue that same kind of logic could apply to our health values, our gynecological values, right? I think it's so far reaching. But one of the things the World Health Organization says is that we can best determine these values if we have an understanding and a grasp of the origins of the things that we believe about the things we do with our bodies. And so, my friends, I know it might seem like we are just stirring the pot here, but I deeply believe that that which is ours to do is ours to do. I think that if you are seeking out medical care or following a prescription on how you take care of your menstruating body, I'd argue you have a right to and a responsibility to the information that informs what you think about this bleeding body of yours. And I know it could seem like a lot. And I'm like, and yet we have a right to and a responsibility for. I think it can become fun. It can become a joy of, actually, maybe I should get to know this body of mine. I can't tell you how many times I have a client who tells me that they start bleeding on the 1st of every month. And I say, that's interesting. Or they'll say I'm late or I'm early. They've never been taught how to calculate their actual cycles. And so when we then go back and we find the first day of their last period and then we count the days and I say, oh, actually, no, your period shouldn't start until this day or that day. It blows their minds because they've always thought that their period comes on the 1st of the month or the 10th of the month or this, that, or the other thing. No, my loves, like Holland was saying earlier, an average cycle is 28 days, but a very normal cycle could be 32, 34, or in my case, 24, and has been since I was 11 years old. It's fine. It is truly fine, but we must know our normal. It's a right in the best way, right? This is my right. But also this is my responsibility because this is my body. And, we throw around my body, my choice. I agree. And I think we have a responsibility to these bodies. Now, education is often gatekept and kept behind certain walls. And so that's why topics like this are so important for us to talk about because they're not taught in middle school and high school like they should be. And so it's a passion of Holland and mine to put them on free platforms like this and to give you more resources because this must be talked about. And again, I loved what Holland said. I don't think this is intentional, but intent does not negate impact. So the fact that your gynecologist doesn't know these things, I don't think is intentional, but it doesn't negate the impact. It was interesting. My own sister was in a gynecological visit yesterday, I do believe, and I don't remember what they were discussing precisely, but the gynecologist was saying the long-term studies do not show any negative side effects of such and such. And yet you have a right to opt into any healthcare you ever choose. And I was like, I like this because yes, sister of mine, you have a right to informed decision-making and you have a right to self-determination. When we receive medical care, we have a right to say, can you inform me of the benefits and can you inform me of the risks? We have a right, my friends, to say, nope, in my mind, those risks outweigh the benefits. Thank you for telling me. And thank you for letting me know that there's no research to show those long-term ramifications. I would love to know the bodies they were done on. I have so many questions, right? Can you show me the research? You can ask this. We have been so cultured to be afraid of people in white coats. It's literally called white coat syndrome. Go look it up. And I just loved, and my sister has worked so hard on finding a gynecologist that truly supports informed decision-making. But that is a beautiful thing to say. Yeah, I can disagree with you and yet still champion your right to opt into the medical care that you receive.
Absolutely.
And I will support you and cheer for you as we go down this alternate journey that you want to try. That is good care. Yes. That is care. And this person is in a female body and is a person who menstruates.
I hadn't planned to go down this route, but now that we're on this topic, I would love to speak about what does it look like to have good gynecological care? I know it's hard these days, I'm not going to lie, but what are the qualities of a good gynecologist?
So for those who might not know, before I was in sexual health, I was in maternal health for a decade. And so worked very closely with providers. Shout out. Hi. Still do. Because I believe in triad approaches. I believe in collaboration. And so what I would say first is I hope everybody knows you can interview providers. You can ask, you can call the front office and you can say, I would like to interview so-and-so. Is anyone accepting new patients? I'd like to interview them. So first you can do that. Second, I highly recommend you get referrals from friends and that you listen to friends. If somebody says that they had not been heard in an office visit, take that as truth. So what you should be looking for, someone who listens to you. Someone who listens to you, someone who asks you questions, someone who consistently practices consensual communication, someone who affirms your desire for things like wearing your own clothes in an exam. Shout out to the viral video, but please know in a gynecological exam room, you can wear your own clothes. You do not need to be in the paper gown.
Wear a dress or
wear a dress, a skirt, a hoodie,
like you can't wear
something,
pants, obviously.
Something that unzips. Wear cozy socks. Someone has very cozy socks on right now. Wear cozy socks. Be as comfy as possible and as warm as possible. There are studies that show that our ability to think rationally literally starts to depart the moment we're naked in an exam room. Go figure, right?
Freezing.
It's horrible in a paper thing.
It's so vulnerable.
God, no. Also, you always should be allowed and given the option to have thinking conversations with your gynecologist, not naked.
Right.
You can do your exam and then say, I'd like to get dressed. You can request to go to their office. You do not need to stay in that room. Also, you can bring someone with you. Mm-hmm. And if any of these things are met with pushback or we don't do that, go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. The strongest form of negotiation is the ability to walk away. I would be silly if I did not mention the thing that so many people in this culture don't know, and that is that midwives provide full spectrum care. Midwives provide care from your first period through menopause. There is this idea that we need to, if it pertains to the uterus, we need to go to a gynecologist. Gynecologists are great, but a midwife can do pap smears. They can do all of your uterus checkups. They can do breast cancer screenings.
They go to medical school, do they not?
They have a whole midwifery track. Most of them have a master's degree. They usually started in, there's various things. We can talk about this a whole nother day, the different tracks of midwifery. But they are incredible. And so human-centered. The midwifery model of care is different than the medical model of care. The medical model of care is the provider makes the decisions. Mm-hmm. The midwifery model of care is the patient makes the decisions. It is called human-centered care or patient-centered care. And there are gynecologists and OBGYNs that I work hand in hand with who have the hearts of midwives who listen and respond and, oh my goodness, hi friends, they are incredible. So I want you to know you can find that, but you also could call a local midwives office and ask if they will see you for a well visit. And the answer is usually going to be yes. They might not do that type of care, but we have a practice here that has always seen me.
And midwives have been who have traditionally taken care of women. Western medicine is new, y'all. I understand how well renowned it is because it brought us so many cures, brought us vaccines in times that were very much needed. In our grandparents, my grandparents, your parents, that generation was taken aback by the care that was brought to them by Western medicine because it brought antibiotics and things like that.
And things like hand washing.
Yes. Yeah. And that is so very sincerely necessary. Yes. But that is literally less than the past 100 years. Less than a century, and humans have been around a lot longer than that. And traditionally before that was holistic medicine and midwifery. And these traditions, these professions deserve our respect. Whether you choose to go to one or not, sure. But I really, really discourage you from looking at midwifery and holistic medicine and looking down upon it because it is not Western. This medicine has kept us alive for thousands of years, and it is given to us from the earth. It is holistic, it is human-centered, and it has its value. And I think it does a really good job hand in hand with Western medicine. Yes. I am not going to tell you what type of medicine you should choose, but both of them have their merit.
No, and practicing midwives, especially certified nurse midwives, can prescribe medication.
Yes.
They are not anti-medication, public health.
No.
But also, if you get curious, look up the smear campaigns against granny midwives that happened in conjunction with the medical and industrial revolution that brought care out of the home and into the hospital. So if you want to just feel better about having a more nuanced point of view, just do that. Again, we have a right to and a responsibility to know what informs the values that we still hold about the care we have. And again, as Holland and I say constantly, we're not telling you what to do. We're just saying we have a plethora of options.
So many options. We really do. And we want you to know that there is validity in all of them. Yeah. And choose what works for you and what you feel most comfortable with. But your provider, whether it be a midwife, a gynecologist, a male gynecologist, a female gynecologist, I don't care. Look into them and feel as if they are centering your health, your pleasure, your life, because they have your life in their hands. Yes. So I would also say we were going down the track of what makes a good care provider. I would also say that you don't feel as if you are like a drop by. I've felt that way often going to a medical provider, sitting in the thing, and you get the nurse the whole time and the doctor says, hey, and then runs away.
I was telling my sister yesterday that this is one of the things I studied in my work, that an average GYN or OBGYN visit, to be reimbursed by insurance, they are allotted 7 minutes.
Oh my God.
With a patient.
Yeah, not enough time.
7. My sister's OBGYN or GYN yesterday spent 26 minutes with her. And I was like, whoa, that's so much time.
But much time. Even then I was like, there's so much more to be spoken about.
So much. So go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. So that you're not a drop by.
Don't feel like a drive by. You deserve to be treated like a human who has a life and a well-rounded picture. Your GYN or OB-GYN or your midwife cannot help you if you do not feel as if they have a well-rounded picture of what your life and your hormones and what your body feels like. You know your body better than anyone else. That is another thing I would say about choosing a care provider. Your care provider should understand that you know what is best for your body because you are the only one living in it. So if something feels wrong, don't let them dismiss you. Something feels wrong, and that is valid. If they say no, find a different person. And I understand too that there is a level of privilege in being able to do that. Because
we have a healthcare desert too, which is so interesting. And it's why midwifery groups are working so hard to try to get midwives back into especially rural communities. Mm-hmm. So yes, to your point, that is a point of privilege. You can also, there's only one office in your town, you can request to switch providers within that office. Yeah, there are ways to report to Better Business Bureau, to ACOG, to the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists. And let me just say, this is something that I do work on with clients. So if all of a sudden Holland and I are stirring up something for you or a tremendous fear to get care, please go to sexedforyou.com/free consult. And this is something I work with folks on, is overcoming these fears and figuring out their origin stories and working in tandem with their providers, writing letters with them that they send over to the nurse, to the doctor beforehand. And it's been highly successful and wonderful. But there are reasons why our bodies are afraid. You're not crazy. Right. You are beautiful and wise, like Holland is saying. Don't believe this. There is nothing wrong with you.
And on the same note of privilege, we do take HSA and FSA. So
we really can.
Email me and I'll help you get that.
Please, we will figure this out. I want to be mindful of our time.
Yes.
I know.
Also, so let's hit on, we did kind of talk about, I want to quickly just say these diagnoses of PMS, PMD, PMAD, they have their own space. I do understand that. I don't know how to say this without offending someone, but you are also just a woman. And these symptoms, I looked up Google helped me get angry for this episode. And the symptoms of PMDD that it gave me were lack of interest in daily life and relationships, fatigue, mood swings, crying, sadness, hopelessness, anxiety, panic attacks, and food cravings. And I want to let you know that those are all valid, but that is also just life. And if your life is deeply unconsensual, if you do not have safe relationships, if you are emotionally just drained all the time by your relationships, by your work, if you are unhappy, if you are in an unsafe relationship, all of these things are also going to play into all of these symptoms. Every single one of these can be affected by a life thing. So while PMDD is a completely valid thing and you can 100% be diagnosed with hormonal imbalances and PCOS and endometriosis and cystic fibrosis and all of these things that are completely and totally real, you know your body best. Is something wrong, or do you need to change something in your life? Do you need to consider your relationship, your job? Do you need to consider how you treat yourself, how you care for yourself? Or are you just looking for a label and a medicine that is not going to help you in the long term? I genuinely want you to ask yourself that, because I can't tell you. I don't know you. But I do know that you are wise and you know your body better than anyone else on this whole wide world.
And the only thing I would add is that Lexapro saved my life. And at one point, I couldn't even see beyond my despair. And I was able to use a medication to start to stabilize myself to the point where then I could look at the life that needed to change. And so there's also never any shame in using something to subdue the loudness of a symptom in order to then get real curious.
Yeah.
Right. So many people come to me and they think they have a sex problem, but really it's a communication problem. I would say that there's a similarity here. So many people come to me and think that there is something wrong with them in the week before their period, and there's nothing wrong with them. There's a lot wrong with their lives and their relationships and the people speaking into their lives and the type of work that they're doing. You all know we talk about human design like it's going out of style over here, but that's because I do feel that there is a life that is meant for each of us to lead, and that together it can be pretty freaking phenomenal if we are doing what is ours to do. And there's look around at the amount of people who bleed, who are over functioning in life, who are doing too much, who are caretaking for everyone around them. And then look at the direct correlation to things like PMDD.
Right.
Now, again, to Helen's beautiful point that she keeps bringing up, privilege. There are not always seasons where we can put the brakes on. And I get that because I have been there. And I stayed in a unhealthy space for people could look at me and go far too long. But it was my story to live. And I didn't think I could get out until it broke me. And so I see you. I think that there are things that we change when it's time to change.
Right. And we just want to empower you with the knowledge that you have power.
If and when it is time.
Choice. Yes.
If and when it is time. And there should never be any shame for using medication, for using something to stabilize. And there should never be any shame for the same, for saying, I now want to not do that. And I instead want to get curious in my life. Great. But that is the joy of informed decision making.
Absolutely.
Is, hey, you're not broken. These all could help.
Yeah.
And you get a right to them. Yes, because things like premenstrual dysphoric disorder, like the things that we call people to. Guys, we have stopped in the sexual health field calling it sexual dysfunction because we're like, this is real problematic. People aren't actually sexually dysfunctional.
You're not wrong.
No, they have these wise bodies who don't want to have sex with that person.
Yes.
So it's just, it says something if certain areas of study are starting to go, oh, that might be a really harmful, we're not calling it vaginismus anymore. We're like, maybe there's nothing wrong with her vagina.
Right.
We're just really starting to get curious. And I encourage us all to do that because that's the cool thing about science is that like we can learn something and then change our mind. A lot of these things are just really weird how they're made to be a bad thing. Like I'm
Yes.
looking at food cravings and I'm like,
Right.
the body is so wise that usually it will crave certain things prior to menstruation because it is like literally storing up. We don't tell a bear before he or she goes into hibernation
Right.
that there's something wrong with them because they are eating more.
Red meats on your period because you need iron, because you're losing blood. There is a reason for all of it. Like,
I
what do
crave
you mean
burgers
food
like
cravings?
it's going out of style.
Same.
It is hilarious. I also am not usually a sweets person and I crave chocolate. Right? There is so much science to that that's beautiful to dig into.
Red wine.
Yes. And what if instead of shaming, what if we embraced and I just
Get curious. I would love for you to get curious. It's your body and you know it. And if that's the only thing you take away from this episode, then I feel successful. It is your body and you know it better than anyone else. Don't let them tell you you're crazy unless you feel crazy, in which case you are correct.
is the book here is at your house, The Taking Charge of Your Fertility. I think it's, yeah.
Oh, it's at my house. That's my
So
favorite
there's a
book.
great book called Taking Charge of Your Fertility, and it has an updated version. I think Holland and I have an older version, but there's an updated version. It's on Audible. It's on Kindle. I highly recommend just getting the paperback because it's one of these that like has worksheets and stuff in it. It's all about tracking your cycle, but it's even more than like stuff like natural cycles would do. It is like, whoa, know your cycle. It is the type of book that you could read cover to cover if you're like my best friend Kay,
stories.
but I have just flipped through it and I learned so much. I feel like I have a period book. Yes, I do. This one's good. It's about bloody time. This one's good. Period. There's so many. There's so many. Theology of the Womb is up here. Yeah. I mean, I swear I could go on and on and on. There's a book called Vagina, a Re-Education. I have bazillions. There's more downstairs on my bookshelf. There's so many fun books that we could, like educate ourselves on and start to view the body as fascinating, not broken.
Yes, I would love that.
It has so much information for us that I think, to Holland's point, we get to know our bodies, right? We have this right to. And then they will give us information. They really will. And so if we're really starting to attune and we're noticing that our cycles are spacing out, I'm in perimenopausal time. It is wild how I am seeing things that I have never seen in my body before. And it makes perfect sense that I'm 39 years old and perimenopausal because I started menstruating 11. That is decades of bleeding. But it's like my body's talking to me. It's like we're having this whole dialogue. And yeah. There's not enough time to talk about all the things. We wanted to talk about things like tampons and how they were never actually studied on menstrual blood until actually really recently.
As in like 6 months ago.
Like as in the research was just published 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. Never. They were used with water and like a saline solution was used. Never endometrial lining and actual blood. So there's things like menstrual cups and menstrual discs. I highly, if you do not follow Period Nirvana on Instagram and also on YouTube, go there for everything menstrual discs and menstrual cups.
They're great.
Holland knows because I don't shut up about talking about it. I have finally found this hybrid menstrual disc cup that's a Nixit product that sits in my vaginal fornix that works better than anything I've ever found. Maybe that'll go on our favorite things list.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll put that on today.
Maybe that would be my today.
Yeah.
Okay. It feels like not a sexy thing, but it is a favorite thing. And if you... I please hear me. I used tampons forever too because I could not find a cup or a disc that worked, and I didn't want to be bleeding out of my pants in public. But I have finally found one that really works. And again, there is no shame for using tampons and pads. No. Well, listen, we are all doing the best that we can do.
I do use tampons actively,
and I literally until this disc had always used them.
Yeah.
But there's never any shame in trying something new too.
Yeah.
And figuring it out and figuring out a suction or a cup that works best for you.
I would love to touch on kind of tips for partners of menstruating people because I think we can very quickly, kind of, you're going to hate us for this, but like communicate.
Shock. Aren't you so shocked?
Ask questions. And also like in long-term partnership, I think is what this more leans to because short-term partnership, you probably don't have enough time to really get to know your person, your menstruating person. But like in long-term partnership, you can really begin to feel the rhythm. It is a rhythm. And so you could lean into, let's plan like, you know, hiking dates and things like that when she's in her follicular phase, right before she ovulates. The day that she's ovulating, let's make sure we have a lot of condoms because she's going to want to jump my bones. After that, she's probably going to be a little moody. Let's make sure that she gets the food that she really wants, that she's, you know, allowed the space to be really frustrated with the world, that I can sit there and let her have a listening turn. Because in my luteal phase specifically, I get just so frustrated with the injustices of the world. I begin to see things through this lens of like, God, why does the world hurt? It hurts. And it just feels like my whole body is overtaken by this need to fix the injustices of the world. So Cookie just is often just sitting there, just letting me, just gives me the space to vent. And just rubs my back and is just like, I know, and that I'm sorry. Yes. And that is the best thing that he could ever do for me. And it has healed a part of me that I can't even begin to speak to. And then when she's bleeding, make sure she has a heating pad, bring her craving foods, help her with her, I don't know, does she need tampons? Does she need a new disc? It really is, it's a rhythm, and it's one that's going to be different to every single person with a uterus. They're all going to have their own rhythm and their own needs and their own desires. So communicate and ask about it. But really, I think the best thing you can do is learn on your own, because we put so much responsibility on the shoulders of women to ask for what they need, which I do believe is very necessary. We have learned that in consensual communication, that yes, you need to be able to ask for what you need, but the power of a partner who can watch and listen and learn on their own without prodding a woman who is in pain, prodding a woman who is like doubled over in cramping pain and bleeding. The power of a partner who can go out and know what she needs because he's been with her for 3 years is more than I can speak to. There is such love in someone who learns on their own time and does not put the responsibility on the partner who is in pain.
Yep. That. To Holland's point, yeah, read a book. Listen to podcasts like this. The power of listening in this time of leading up to the menstrual cycle and while a person is bleeding is invaluable. Saying, would you like me to listen? And then just listen. You don't have to fix it. Mm-hmm. There is nothing that you can do. And I want to speak to the good men out there too. It can be really hard to watch someone you care about in pain, suffering with the injustices of the world. So many good men have been conditioned to fix things. And one of the greatest gifts you can do is just listen. Nothing needs to be fixed right now. To let your partner's heart break for the world is a gift. It will shine light on things for you. Just sit, just be. Yes, there are certain massages, you could look them up, that are so great for the lower back. There's a certain way to squeeze her pelvis that could feel so good. Holdings, cuddles, saying, I know, I hear you, I see you. Baths, filling up a bath for her or for the bleeding person, bringing foods, but mostly just listening and validating the lived experience. Doing a chore, picking up something for her, saying, may I get you a food on my way home? I just watch it work. Just watch. A woman who has been told by the world that she needs to be a man, watch her get to be a human and watch you heal the world. There's so many quotes that say, if you want to heal the world, heal yourself. And I think this is where it starts, is allowing a bleeding person to bleed and not feel that they are broken. And you can help by holding space. And we're all like laughing at all the wicked holding space jokes, but listen.
Hold your pinky.
Hold that space. Listen, be, request to do things. And enjoy it. Enjoy not having to fix anything. Yeah, if you have more questions, a male embodied person or a person who doesn't bleed, who wants to support a bleeding partner, yeah, you can also go to sexedforyou.com/free consult. I'd love to do just a drop-in menstruation support session with you. Just put it in the notes that that's what you're looking for. And I would be honored to equip you. It's things like that are things you can do. If you don't want to read a book, you can pay me 100% for an hour to give you my favorite tidbits on how you could support your bleeding person, because we'll heal the world that way. We really will. And I have my teenagers' teachers who will email me and say, oh, so I guess your kid was menstruating and didn't come to school yesterday, but here's the things. And I'm like, no. When cramps are that bad, we stay at home and we do this work from inside. And there is I will not apologize to Holland's very first point. The systems are not created for people who bleed. She will do the work. She will, but from the comfort of her bed with a heating pad.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for coming to this episode. We hadn't talked about this in a long time, and it's a passion of both of ours. Very much a passion. If you have more questions, you can always email Holland at admin@sexedforyou.com. If you want to talk more about this, go to sexedforyou.com/free consult. I have a handout.
I was going to make a handout, actually.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to make a new one that's just a lot of good information, like a 1-pager.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to make that for y'all.
And maybe we'll offer the masterclass again at some point coming up. Feel free to put that in the comments if you'd like to see that happen. I meant to respond. So if you guys throw that in comments or send us a message that say, yes, do the masterclass again, I'd be happy to. Again, right now it's just getting used a ton with current clients. So if you're a current client, you're like, hey, I want to know more about that. You can let me know. It's a favorite. It's really a favorite. Where can they find us on the internets?
You can find us at sex_ed_for_you or on Facebook at sexedforyou with the first E being a 3. And then you probably have us on YouTube, which is just sexedforyou also. And you can always email me at admin@sexedforyou.com.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for healing the world by listening to conversations like this. And remember, you're not broken. You are beautiful just the way you are. Bye-bye.
Bye.